Yeah, so we've decided to set up the fund. We've got the money in there. We've invested it. Last piece in the puzzle is how we go about getting the money out of the superannuation fund. For most people, that involves starting a pension of some sort. Generally, apart from being disabled, you're going to have to be over 55 to do that. But importantly, you don't need to be retired to start a pension and getting money out of your super fund. You do need to be over 55. Why would you want to do it if you're not actually needing the money? And I'll touch on some of these things again later, but as soon as you start a pension inside a super fund, whether it's self-managed or not, what you're doing is converting the 15% tax rate on investment earnings to a 0% tax rate. You're converting a 10% capital gains tax rate inside the super fund to a 0% capital gains tax rate inside the super fund. So there's some savings for the super fund by you starting a pension and just drawing the minimum amount that you have to legally have to. A bit like getting money into the fund, the government interferes with how much you can get out and sets rules around requiring you to meet a minimum that must come out of the super fund each and every year. That minimum is based on age. The idea is, well, I think their idea is to make sure that by the time you're deceased, you've pretty much spent all your money in superannuation if you live to 100. The percentages, as I say, increase by age. The government has tinkered with them over the last few years during the global financial crisis and said, look, you know, if we made everyone take out their full amount, they'll run out of money too soon because asset values have fallen. So they've decreased them, allowed some concessions there so you don't have to take as much. The percentages are based on your member balance either at the start of the pension if it's part way through the year or on the 1st of July each year. So at the end of every year, we do up your financial statements. We'll say you've got $300,000 in your super fund. That's the figure that you're basing the next year's pension on. So if you're under 65, it'll be 4% of that 300,000. At the end of the year, we assess it all again, and it'll be whatever your member's balance is times 4% unless you've had a birthday and got a bit older. So I'm going to refer to that table in some of the examples a bit later on, so you might have to flick backwards and forwards a bit there for it to make some sense perhaps. The other thing that's important about getting money out of pensions, more jargon I'm afraid, sorry. Your member's balance is made up of a tax-free and a taxable component. Those distinctions don't make an awful lot of difference to you if you are over 60 and taking the money out, or if on your death you're leaving it to your spouse or to a dependent child. However, if you are leaving it to a non-dependent child or are under 60, those splits inside your member's balance do make a difference. Basically anything that's in the taxable component, as the name suggests, you pay a bit of tax on somewhere on the line. I'll explain those things a little bit more detail as we go along, but jargon, can't avoid it I'm afraid. The other thing about getting money out is that, Paula mentioned it, you must satisfy a condition of release. All that means is one of those 5 things. I was struggling to think of the fifth one the other day, Megs. The obvious one, 65 years of age. If you're over 65, you have full and free access to whatever you have inside superannuation. You do not need to retire, you don't need to be dead, you don't need to be totally and permanently disabled or bankrupt. 65, you're good to go, you can take your money. Under 65, you need to meet one of those other 4 things, and certainly don't recommend most of them. Retirement might be right, I'm not there yet. Mark, yet. All it means is if you've met one of those conditions of release, your money moves from what they call preserved, can't touch it, to non-preserved, can touch it. So we'll work through a few examples of getting money out. The first couple are about while you are still working. So if you're between 55 years of age and 59 years of age, you can start a pension without retiring It's called a Transition to Retirement Income Stream, a TRIS. As per that table I showed you before, there's a minimum amount that you must take out, and if you're less than 59 it'll be 4% next year, and you are capped at a maximum of just 10% of your balance. So if you have $100,000 in your member's balance, you can only have $10,000. That's the most you can have in a 12-month period. If you are under 60 years of age, what you take out of your super fund is taxed. It goes, or the taxable portion is taxed. It goes into your personal tax return and taxed at whatever your normal rate is, but it does carry a 15% tax offset. So there's a bit of a credit for the tax that the super fund has paid in getting you to that point. Once you turn 60, up to age 64, and you are not retired still, not dead, not disabled, not bankrupt, then exactly the same as if you're under 60 years of age, other than you don't pay any tax on it personally. You can take that money out tax-free. Quick little example here of good old Joe the farmer. He's 5 years older than I am, but he still wants to keep farming. He has $350,000 sitting in his super fund. He's lucky enough to be earning 7% at the moment, so he actually has about $24,500 of income there each and every year. That $24,500 of income is currently being taxed at 15%. So the super fund is paying on behalf of his members' balance $3,675. If he were to start a pension, he has to take 4% of that of his money out. So 4% of 350 is 14 grand. That will leave his super fund. However, he has saved $3,675 inside his super fund. So depending on what rate and how successful the farmer's been that particular year, he may be saving some money overall. He may not be. If he's had a boomer of a year and he's earned $500,000 off the farm, then that pension he's taken out is actually going to cost him more money than what he saved inside the super fund, and maybe he shouldn't have started the transition to retirement pension at age 55. If he'd waited till he was 60, whatever he takes out of the super fund is tax-free anyway. So no tax to him personally, and he still saved the $3,675 in the super fund. So transition to retirement income streams, good idea, but you actually have to sit down and think through the numbers before you go launching into it. So it's not suitable for everybody. Like most things in life, look at your own individual circumstances first. The third scenario, still working, but want to get some money out of superannuation, aged over 65, so any age over 65 still working. 65 is an automatic condition of release. Automatically you have open access to your money. The only difference will be you still need to make your minimum withdrawal. The only difference will be that there is no cap. So if you want 100% of your money, you can have it. If you want 50% of your money, you can have it. The only thing you've got to do is make sure you've taken, if you're over 65, the 5% that the government says you must take as of next year. So no maximum, it's all tax-free, go your hardest. Obviously, once you've taken all your money out, there isn't anything left. So once it's gone, it's gone. So we've talked about getting money out while you're still working, while you're not retired. Once you are retired, yes, it's obviously more possible to get money out. Between 55 and 59, you can start a pension. That pension will have that same minimum we spoke about before, 4% of your members' balance. But because you're not working anymore, you don't have the upper cap. You're not restricted to 10%, so you can take more money out. However, some of that money will be taxed in your own hands. That taxable component you'll have to pay tax on. If you don't want to start a pension, you're just looking for a quick lump sum, go on the round the world cruise or whatever it might be, there is a tax-free lump sum amount. It's indexed every year. It's about $160,000 at the moment. Anything above that, you pay tax on. So that's retired and under 60. Getting money out once you're 60 and retired, no problems at all. It's all tax-free. You can take a pension, minimum amount must be met once again. No cap on how much you do take, so if you want more than your 10%, go for it. You can have 100%, you can take it quarterly, monthly, 6 monthly, annually, whatever you like, doesn't matter. It's tax-free, doesn't go in your tax return even. So it will not impact other income that you might have in your own personal name that is going into the tax return. It just doesn't even get reported. So age 60 and over and retired, open slather, once again, once it's gone, it's gone. The other way you can get money out of the super fund is to die. I guess you don't get it, someone will. Death benefits in a superannuation fund do not automatically form part of your estate. So you might have your will up to date, but unless you have made provision inside the superannuation fund, your will probably won't help you a great deal at that particular point. So unlike every other asset you own personally, you can't say inside your will, I want my superannuation money to go to Joe Bloggs. What you'd need to do is have a death benefit nomination inside your superannuation fund. Now when we set it up, that's one of the things we talk about and go through anyway. But from time to time you need to address that and say, look, is the death benefit nomination I have in force already good enough? Is it still going to do what I want? There are two types of death benefit nominations, a binding one and a non-binding one. A binding nomination just means that the trustee, your executives of your estate and the other person or people in the fund have to do what your nomination says. So if it says, I wanted to go to Save the Trees Foundation, then that's where it's got to go. The other sort, the non-binding nomination, is really just an instruction of wishes. I would like my money to go to the Save the Trees Foundation. The other trustees go, no way, I want that money myself, and they can overrule you and do what they like with your money. They do have to take into account potential beneficiaries, so it's not as easy as that. They have to look and say, well, there is children involved, there's a spouse involved, all those sorts of things. So they've got to go through the right steps to make sure the money gets to where it should go to. But it is just an instruction of where you would like your money to go to. So death benefit gives you certainty. You are saying, absolutely, this is where my money's going. Non-binding, probably that's where it will end up, but not necessarily. One of those that nomination doesn't have to be to a person or people. It could simply be to your estate, in which case it does then get picked up by your will. So if you said in your binding death benefit nomination, on my death, my member's balance is to be paid to my estate, absolutely, that's what will happen. Then your will deal with it. If you do die and you have money inside superannuation, that death benefit is paid to your spouse or a dependent child under 21. That money, regardless of whether it was taxable or tax-free component, goes to them tax-free. If, however, you're the last man standing or woman standing, you have no spouse, your kids are all grown up, that money has to go to an independent child. They will pay 16.5% on the taxable component inside your balance. So there are some tax consequences in that sort of situation. I've mentioned recontribution strategy there, more jargon. I'm going to come back to that in a second, so I'll explain that one in a bit more detail in a minute. So in terms of death and your superannuation fund, make sure your will's up to date. Trot down and see Amy. Make sure that it's coordinating with what you've done inside your superannuation fund. If you've made a binding death benefit nomination to leave it all to the kids, or a particular child, maybe your will needs to leave them out of the estate because they're already being catered for via your superannuation fund. So make sure it's up to date, make sure the two things work hand in hand and are achieving what you want to do overall. And we're going to finish with the recontribution strategy because it's technical and I really want to drive you mad and bore you. The easiest way to describe this is with an example. We've tried to keep it as simple as we can. Unfortunately, it's numbers, which accountants love. But hopefully you'll see the benefit of it. So Betty's 62 and has retired. she's got a super fund with $250,000 in it. Her only potential beneficiary is little son Bill, who is independent. He's working, got his own life. So on Betty's death, she intends her benefit to be paid to him. There's cash, there's property in there, doesn't really matter, but you know, the split, tax-free, taxable is $50,000 that is tax-free. So on her death, Bill will get that 50 grand tax-free, no dramas. However, there's $200,000 that is taxable sitting there. So on Betty's death, Bill will pay $33,000 of tax out of what he receives from Betty's benefit. Yeah, sure, he's better off, but he probably won't, well, hopefully after the grief has subsided and he's seen the $33,000 go off to the tax office, he might not feel so excited about what Mum did for him. So, if Betty gets herself organised, she can do this recontribution strategy. All it means, all the strategy is really just pulling money out while she's alive and putting it back in. Sounds dodgy, sounds like you're trying to beat the system somehow or other. No, none of those things, the rules allow for it. It's quite clean, quite legal. Tax Office have issued rulings to say that they're perfectly happy with it. You've got to work within the rules still, so you can't just go crazy with it. In our example here, Betty's going to take $100,000 out of her super fund. She's over 60, she can do it as a lump sum, she's retired, no tax on it to her, so that $100,000 comes out intact as it is. It goes into her personal bank account, sits there for a day or two, then she gets the bank to transfer it back to the super fund bank account. So $100,000 has come out to her, $100,000 has gone straight back into the super fund. What that has done is take a portion of her taxable balance and a smaller portion of her tax-free balance out. So out of that $100,000, the numbers are nice and easy for us. So she's taken 100 grand. Should be nice and easy if I could read my writing, read Meg's notes. She's taken $100,000. Some of that was taxable. If someone else received it, some of it was tax-free. She puts it back in and it's changed the proportions. So the $200,000 that was previously taxable is now only $120,000 that is taxable. So good old Bill, when he does get the money if Mum passes away, again gets through the grief stage and he only has to part with $19,800 of the money that he's received. So Bill has saved $13,200. And he's really grateful for Mum for going off and doing the recontribution strategy. Because Betty's only 62, she can actually do this several years in a row. The trick will be the contributions cap, so she can't pull out, well, she can pull out more than $150,000, she just can't get it back in. So she's going to have to manage that cash flow. She's not working, so once she hits 65, she can't get any more money in at all. So she's got a little window of opportunity there to wash some money out through her personal bank account, back into the super fund, helping Bill out, making no difference to herself. So definitely worth considering once you're 60. It's not quite so attractive below 60 because you've got the tax consequences to keep in mind for yourself. But once you're over 60, definitely need to have a look at it. So it's a bit like insurance really. It's not going to help you one way or the other. It's not going to help your spouse much one way or the other, but it might help your kids.